Hi, guys, and welcome to our first live manuscript feedback. I have no idea how this is going to go. Hopefully, well. Of course, today my good camera refused to work. It just kept shutting itself off. Who knows why? Because we all know technology may not a good mix. So now I have to use my crappy camera. So sorry if the quality is lower than normal, but I just could not get the good one to work. So, anyways, I had a bunch of submissions. And if you're one of the people that submitted, please let me know because I want to be able to talk directly to you when you're here. I did put the link in here to the form if you want to do it at the last minute. The easiest thing for me, obviously, is if you can do it ahead of time. So I have a little bit of time to sort of look at what you've got. And that way I can give you more constructive feedback because I want to be able to give you feedback that really works right then and there. And if I just do it off the cuff, I'm not as effective, I don't think, as if I am when I have a little bit of time. Nice to see you, Gayla and Cheryl, and another Cheryl, two Cheryls in the room tonight. Today, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a Monday, guys. It's a Monday. And so if you are one of the people that submitted, which I think was Cora and Skeeter, nice to see you here, Heather and Faith. And who was the other? There's a couple other people. Cheryl. Okay, so Cheryl Martin, right? The one that's here. And so I can do that one if that's you that submitted. Cheryl Martin, are you the one that submitted the YA fantasy? Because I can go with yours first off since I don't see Skeeter or Cora here. I'll still go over the stuff in case they tune in later, but it'd be easier just to talk directly to the person that submitted. So, and yes, I do get the whole thing with getting in the weeds and really struggling to submit the 200 words. And the reason I do that, I think I've told you guys, is because I want every word to count. And yes, it is a tremendous amount of pressure. And so, Cheryl, great. I will do yours first then. Aren't you so lucky you spoke up? So now you get to go first. I remember being in a workshop one time with an agent who said that he knows in 3 sentences if he wants to look at the book. And I thought that was impossible back then because I had not sold the book yet. But once I sold my first book and then I started, writing more and working with authors, I immediately got it and understood how in 3 sentences you can completely blow your chance at getting an editor or agent or a reader's attention because you have such a limited window of time to do this. And so every single word has to count, particularly those first few words. So let me pull up Cheryl's first so that I can make sure I'm on the right one. Okay. And then I can share it and see how it goes. We'll see how this goes. So hopefully everybody can see what I'm going to share because I'm going to share my screen. And I appreciate you submitting, Cheryl, because I know it's pretty terrifying, especially for the first one that we've ever done. So hopefully this will be super helpful. And I've got to be able to see it here. Oh, there we go, add stage. Okay, so what you're doing is YA fantasy. I love fantasy. I don't write it, but I do like reading it and I love watching it. The only thing I'm really not a big fan of, ironically, is vampires. So that's kind of something I don't usually watch or read. Doesn't mean that I won't offer feedback on something with vampires. It's just the one kind of thing I don't do. And Coffee Crate Connect, I'm so excited that you're excited about it too. Let's hope that this all goes super well because I'm nervous about, upsetting anybody or anything like that. So anyways, just know that all of the advice is coming from a place of, I want you to be better. I want you to be able to get better at your book and do what you want to do. So Cheryl is YA fantasy. She's got Mari is stubborn, impulsive, and curious. She wants the magic like the powerful witches before the war, but her family's in hiding, and anything other than simple magic is forbidden. And she's adopted a group of orphans to care for like her own. And then you've got this really great conflict between the two main characters with Nico and him feeling like his sister dying was his fault. I think you've got some great conflict built into this concept already. So I really like it. And I love these strong girls to begin with. And I love what you're doing with it right now already. And so you really wanted to work on voice. And I've got originally your paragraph here. And how I did this today, so that you guys understand the method behind my madness, was I wanted you to be able to see what you already had. And then I want you to see, this is how I work with clients a lot of times too, when you do a consult with me. I want you to see the after without any markups, and then see it with the markups so that maybe it's not as jarring, but also that you can immediately see how it has changed. So what everybody gave me this week was actually pretty good, but it needed just a little bit more oomph, right? And I'm going to get into exactly what you needed for the oomph. So let's talk about your original. I arranged my face in a superior look of someone who wasn't in need of help, someone who didn't have to beg the brothers for their mercy. Stand tall, look sharp. I sucked in my stomach to look an inch taller. So let's start just there. What I changed it to, because I liked what you had in the beginning, I arranged my face in a superior look of someone who wasn't in need of help, chin up, gaze pointed, someone who didn't have to beg the brothers for their mercy, loved all of that. And then you need a reaction from the other people. The disdain the heavy-set one felt for me with a sneer on his face. I assume we're kind of coming in the middle of a scene. If it isn't in the middle, then just establish that there's a couple of other guys there, the soldiers, because I'm assuming there's more than one person in the room, and show that that person doesn't think she's got that. Because what that then does, and I'll tell you guys the colors. The yellow is conflict, the gray is motivation, and the green is goal. When that other guy gives her disdain, the sneer on his face, that gives her motivation for what you had here, which was stand tall, look sharp. And then she needs just a little bit more motivation to suck in her stomach to look an inch taller, which is your next line. Don't let them win. And then your action makes more sense because the character has to have, there's got to be an action, a reaction, and a new action so that it follows this natural progression of events that I talk about a lot of times in the manuscript masterminds. So that's what I'm trying to do in there with that. Yes, that girl writes, that girl that writes. Yellow is conflict, green is goal, and gray is motivation. So, and some of them you'll notice I've got two colors in there because it can be both things in that. All right, let's move on. So the next thing you had was that the soldier would be your savior, and when he appeared, he was lit by a dazzling light for a moment. But what I saw was not what I expected at all. You've got great conflict in this already. And then you kind of got into what was different about him. So let's kind of drag it out just a little bit more because you've got a lot of tense things going on here. And the voice is coming through, but it could be that much stronger. So when you suck in her stomach, she's thinking like I had steel for a spine, like I wasn't terrified. And there's her internal conflict. So I added a little bit of conflict with that. And then we've got to have the action start happening because you have the red appear, but you don't have him actually start showing up. So when I heard, shortly I told myself as I heard approaching footsteps, this soldier will be our savior. So that's her goal. That's why she's standing there. The door opened in a rush so that you can hear him come down the hall, and then the door opens. And it's not just getting through the minutia of actions, it is drawing out the tension for the reader. And the red appeared, lit by dazzling light streaming through the windows. Now, what you had before was lit by dazzling light for a moment. For a moment is not really a powerful, impactful end. So I wanted to do lit by dazzling light streaming through the windows. It's a little bit more powerful. You can even switch it up and have the dazzling light at the end. You just want kind of more of an impactful end to the sentence because this is an important character for this scene. And again, you've got action and then you need reaction. So originally you had what I saw was not what I expected at all for when he must be close to my age. And I like that, great conflict in there, but she needs to have a little bit of a reaction that shows this is not what she was expecting. So I stumbled a bit, or, you know, maybe her shoulders sagged or something, whatever action you want to put in there. Then that makes sense to say he was not what I expected at all. And then let her analyze him in the order that it would make sense. So you kind of had, you had the way he was dressed, the beard, the hair, the cloak, then the leathers, then the vest, and it's kind of not in the right order of how you would notice things because you have to kind of work from the top down, what she would notice first, and then kind of go through in the logical order of how she would notice it. So close to my age, dressed almost shabbily. We'll get into how he's dressed in a second, with the stubbled beginnings of a beard and dark hair stuck up like mountain peaks. What I did there was just make it a little bit more showing, just a tiny bit more. You had very close to there. He had the beginnings of a beard, and his hair was stuck up in parts like he had just pulled off a knit cap. Like that, but it can be a little bit more visual if you compare the sticking up to mountain peaks. You know what I'm saying? So it can be a little bit stronger. And then let's vary up the sentence structure a little bit. Instead of the bright red cloak with the orders, medallions, and honors decorating his chest, he wore no cloak at all. And then it would make more sense that she would go from the cloak to the vest. His vest was a pale crimson, as faded as his leather. So cloak, vest, then the stuff that he's wearing as his pants. The heavy fabric covering his legs was worn and dull, as windburned as his cheeks, so that we're not repeating the fading again, and we're coming back up to his face, because she's going to look, when you look at somebody, right, you look at their face, you look down, and then you go back up to their face. And so I wanted it to be that logical progression of how she would look at him. And she's not going to notice, because you have him, he was hunched over drunkenly like he came straight from a pub. Well, he's walking into the room. So let's have him take a step toward her. And then she'll notice his back was hunched and his footsteps were unsure. And she would be thinking, was he drunk? And then I think she needs to think, this was one of the best in their order. Because that's like, oh crap, this is what I get? This is not what I was expecting. So when you look at what I did in here, there's a whole bunch of changes, right? A lot of red. So I don't like to lead with that, like I was saying. It was kind of just moving it all around so that it was a little bit stronger in there and had a little bit more showing. And yes, Cheryl works on progression of events all the time. You want to think about how logically somebody does this. So Cheryl, give me feedback on what I said, because I could be totally off base with your story. I only have a paragraph of it, right? So I don't know that much, but I really want to get your feedback on what you think. It's really close. It's really, really close to where you need it to be. It just needed to have a little bit more oomph and a little bit more tension drawn out with the scene so that the characters are coming alive just a tiny bit more on the page. And I like her. I think she comes through really strongly. And I like the way that she views him. I think you just needed just that little extra bit more. And yes, that girl that writes green is gold, but gray is motivation, and yellow is conflict. And you guys see this conflict thing, right? I talk about it all the time. Conflict, 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 conflict. Look how much conflict Cheryl has in this section. I'll show you another one in a little bit that doesn't have as much. But there is a ton of conflict that is in this section right here with all of these things. The conflict of the other guys looking at her like she's an idiot. The conflict of her interior fears that she's not enough. The conflict of him, oh crap, this is not what I expected. And all of that going through with him not being what she expected. Then the conflict of, is he drunk? And then the conflict of, this is the best they have to offer. So it's a great scene because it goes clearly from the goal to the disaster at the end of the scene. Like, oh no, this is not how I expected it to work out at all. So like I said, Cheryl, you're super close. You're super close. It's just that little bit extra that you needed to add. Yes, she did do a great job. So I also have one from Skeeter and Cora and Faith. I think that's it. I think I have 4, not 5. So yeah, great job there, Cheryl. And I can send you the words after. If you shoot me your email address, I can send you the feedback that I did on there. Yeah, Skeeter and Cora and Faith. So if any of those people are here, I would be happy to go ahead and do yours as well. Yeah, Cheryl did do a great job on that. I really thought that it came through really well. Okay, so Skeeter or Cora, we're going to do it anyways. You guys can watch it in the replay. So, and oh, Faith, yes. Okay, so Faith will go second because Faith is here and she's probably like, crap, I shouldn't have spoken up. What was I thinking? And I'm so excited that you are here. Okay. All right, let's go to yours. So I think I might end up putting these into separate files next time. I'm just trying to learn the best way to do it. So is that it? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it because it's kind of small on my computer. So Faith's main character is a woman that is looking for her husband. She finds details in a GPS that takes her to this address that she's gone to. And her external goal is to find him, but she has doubts about him and she really wants to confirm what she's thinking. And she wants to know if her descriptions are more telling or showing. So I think you were a mix of both. You had some telling and you had some showing, but you could have had stronger of both. So let's talk about what was here before. The wooden door, this is what you had. The wooden door seemed like the only thing that couldn't rust over yet was still coming apart. I love these little details. You've got terracotta pots lined up in a single file by the broken porch swing, filled with the dead remains of what once lived within. Miss Susan would have an absolute heyday if I told her about this down at the flower shop. I'm not sure she could even nurse this property back to health. So great little imagery there. But before she knocks on the door, we need a little bit more setup. We need a little bit more going on in here, and we need to see a little bit more, and we need to show. And you're missing some really prime opportunities here to foreshadow what I know is coming. So if you look at what I did instead, I showed the door a little bit more. The wooden door hung crooked, wooden panels cracked and splintered, so we can really show that it's falling apart. Hinges and handle rusting away. Because if the door is wooden, then the door itself is not rusty, so you want to clarify it's the hinges and handle. Moldy terracotta pots, because you know how you leave a pot out too long, it gets all that green stuff on it, filled with the dead remains of what once lived within them. And then a little bit stronger than saying, what do we have here before, lined up in single file, marched single filed alongside a broken porch swing hanging by a single chain. And let me do one little nitpicky thing here. So you had terracotta pots lined up in a single file by the broken porch swing, filled with the dead remains of what once lived within. When you have the clause at the end of the sentences, this is my Warner's grammar thing coming out, filled with the dead remains of what once lived within, that clause refers to the last thing that was referenced, which is the swing. So the order is kind of wrong. So you needed to kind of reword it to get the order wrong. So let's put the pots there, show the swing, and come back to the pots so that you've got the things that are together going together. So I did whatever plants the pots had once coddled, because, you know, you think about maybe the plants taking care of them had become skeletal sticks. And then she would have the thought, I doubt even Miss Susan would be able to nurse this property back to health. And then this is what I'm talking about with the opportunity. I couldn't help but wonder if the dry, desiccated stalks in the pots were warnings, because they're skeletal, right? She's looking for a guy that might be dead, and you're trying to set up the foreshadow the suspense, and just one line can do a big amount of suspense for the reader and be like, oh, I wonder what's coming. Even if the reader hasn't read the back of the book or know what's going to happen, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So that's why the power of one line and a couple of really strong words, dry, desiccated stalks, can really lift it up a little bit more. Then you've got to give her a motivation and a goal. So you know why she's there. I know why she's there because you told me in the paragraph. But back here, you didn't have her motivation at all. You just have her start knocking, and then she walks right into the house. So I think you need to draw that out a little bit more, the way that it would naturally progress. And poor Cheryl's like, she's always saying natural progression of events, but truly natural progression of events. She's going to have to take a minute. She's not going to just walk straight into the house. So let's give her motivation first. It didn't matter if this was a warning. I needed to know. Now, we don't explain the whole thing to the reader here because I want that suspense to still stay there. Like, what does she need to know? And I think logically, natural progression of events, somebody would knock on the door, you know, soft at first, just a little, and then much harder and more insistent. Because at first you're going to be like a normal neighbor, and then much harder and more insistent. Then you'll hear echo inside the house. So we already have a foreshadow that the house is empty. And then the harder she knocks, then the blue paint chips would flake off like snow. So when you guys are showing, I really want you to kind of close your eyes and think, how am I going to show these paint chips? What is going to logically happen with them when I'm pounding on a door that is flaking and dry? Well, paint chips aren't going to just get on your knuckles. They're going to flake down like snow, or however you want to describe it. And then you've got to have action, reaction, no response, because you have to have her have a reason for going into the house, right? She can't just walk on in. So she'd wait a minute more, I would think, you know, give the person inside a second if they're there. Even if you know that there's nobody there, you don't want to get shot, so you're not going to just walk in. Then decided to hell with it. So there's her motivation to go into the house. I turned the knob and pushed the door. And I liked this line that you had a lot. Inhaling with the same force as the door, I crossed the threshold. So I really liked the imagery that you had in that line. And then I think it makes sense, even if you know nobody is there, so you don't get shot by, you know, or attacked by somebody that's maybe sleeping there, to say something. Hello? My voice disappeared down the hall. So again, with just a little line, like adding a little line like that, you can add that suspense to it. And she would just say, I would think, I didn't mean to barge in, but no one answered. Action, reaction. What does the house do? The house held its breath, silent. So the house becomes kind of real here in this scene. It becomes another character because you don't have a character for her to bounce off of. So let's create the house as a much more sinister thing than it is. And not about to give up any secrets anytime soon. I added that just again, up the notch of the suspense just a tiny bit more. And now you had the description of the house, which I liked, and I liked that you had the prime real estate for the white line shape of a dead man. But I really wanted you to draw it out and make it clearer because I had to read that a couple of times to get it. So I closed the door because she's going to close the door behind herself, I would think, waited for my eyes to adjust, and then took in the space. Not charming or homely by any means. Actually, it looked like the scene of a murder. So that's kind of what you had before. But it wasn't super clear that there wasn't a chalk outline there. So I said a giant bare spot on the living room floor, white against the beige towels, had the same irregular shape as the white outline of a dead man. So that you can understand what it is, but no, it's not a real chalk outline. But there was no dead man there. And now we can work in a little bit of backstory rather than saying, what did you say before? Other than the fact that I had done this 3 times over the past 2 weeks, it never gotten easier to search a stranger's home for my dead husband. Great hook at the end. But let's just make the backstory a little bit clearer. There was no dead man there, nor had there been in the other 3 houses. So now we're like, what is her problem? Why is she looking in all these houses? Still, I moved further into the space, and then I wanted to use your same little hook that you had there, about to search another stranger's home for my dead husband. So conflict and motivation, and also this is also the goal. I mean, she's doing the same. She's searching another stranger's house. That's also a conflict because it's not her house, but it's also a goal. And I did not highlight that with blue because my computer's refusing to let me do that. So sorry. Okay. Yes. And action reaction written on a sticky note on my computer. That's exactly what you need to have. Something happens, character or something in the scene needs to react to it because we all do. And I'm glad that, yes, that's working for you. I think it came out really, really good. And just like Cheryl, it just needed that little extra oomph to kind of get it there. I've written a lot of suspense novels. I'm working on my 5th or 6th right now, maybe more. And I've also sold a bunch of short story suspense. So I've done a lot of it. And it really is all about sort of just dragging out that tension just a tiny bit more. And it's hard to tell you guys how to do that in all of the videos. It's much easier to just show you. Here, I'm going to show you exactly what it is. So any questions on that, Cheryl or Faith, before I do Cora's and or Skeeter's? Because Cora's got more of like an outline thing and Skeeter's got more of an actual scene. So they submitted, so we're going to do them on the channel. And in case you didn't, if you want to submit for next time, because that'll be in 2 weeks, we're going to do it once every 2 weeks until enough time opens up in my calendar to offer it more often. There's the form right there. And again, it really does give me a lot more time to look at it. You guys are welcome to submit during the live. And if I've run out of things to talk about, which we all know I can talk for a long time, but if I run out of things to talk about, then I can absolutely pick up one of the other ones. I just won't be able to give it my best particular feedback because I won't have the time. When I did want to mention, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you should subscribe and like this so that more writers see it, particularly these things that you find super helpful. It's really good if you like, share, comment. Any of that engagement tells YouTube, oh, other writers might like this. And the new video that's out today is why my books got banned. I think I am the only person on YouTube with 2 banned books. So I think that's kind of awesome. I'm super proud of it. All right, so let me look at Skeeter's. Let me pull his up on my computer first and then look at his. And if you guys have questions about anything I've said, even if it's not your chapter or your submission, that's totally cool. Just ask a question. I'd rather everybody learns than not. Okay, so let's add this. Okay, so Skeeter's got a worldview YA fantasy, again, another YA fantasy, which I really do like. And this is also sort of a healing, because Cheryl's had some magic. This is a healer that is, she's promised never to use it again. And then when her aunt is injured, she has to make a choice that alters her life completely. So Skeeter has a great hook in that description of the book because I really like that. So how does her life alter? How does it change? I like that last line a lot. So what Skeeter was asking was, is the pacing in this, is this a good hook? So here's my problem that I had with it. There was a little bit too much pacing, if that makes sense. If you look at it, it's a lot of action, which I love. I talk about that all the time, but it's a little too much action. And I get that it's like a car accident and things happen super fast in a car accident, but we still need just a teeny bit of setup and a little bit more drawing it out. So right now, Skeeter has fear and adrenaline pulse through my every vein. The tires squeal, burnt rubber intoxicates the air. The car jerks. I squeeze the seatbelt for dear life. Breath is short as the world turns into streaks of color for the quickest moment in history. Another jerk, my head whips the headrest, glass shatters, smoke rises from the engine, everything stands still. So it's great action. But I felt a little rushed, like the reader needs to have a little bit of time, a tiny bit of time emotionally to sort of process it. So pacing isn't just about keeping the action rolling. It's also about, okay, is this a place where the reader needs to take a breath? It's also when you read it aloud and you're like, wait, I'm just reading, and I'm reading really fast and I'm not able to take a breath. You're also doing that to the reader, because remember, the reader is basically saying it in their head when they read it. So you want to kind of measure that pacing and say, all right, do I need to slow down a little bit here? Do I need to kind of draw it out a little bit? So then the character wrestles with the airbag, the fabric burns and cuts into my hands. I yank the door open, breathing heavily, roll onto the ground, lay on my back, staring up at the fading stars. I'm free, but where's mom? And so this is a big suspense or scare moment for the character. She notices that she's still in the car. She flings the driver's door open. Glass flecks in her raven hair reflect the rising sun and flashing car lights, and a stream of blood oozes down her forehead. Please don't be dead. So I like all that. It's a lot of hooks. It's a lot of stuff going on. But again, we need to have just a little bit of time for the reader to sort of absorb it. So what you need to do in order to give the reader that time is to set up a hook, and then you have a little bit of space before you have to get back into it. Because the hook, and I have a video coming out hopefully on Thursday about hooks. I'm editing it right now. With the hook, you give it a boom right there, and the reader's like, oh crap, what just happened? And so then you have a brief minute to get into the setup of the scene or a tiny bit of backstory if you need it. So what I did was I put, when the crash happens, it is fast and terrifying. So it's a teeny bit of foreshadowing. And you could argue that, yes, it's out of her point of view because it's, you know, a future thing and you want it to be in the present day. But I think you can totally get away with it if you're not doing it on every page. And so now we just have to have a tiny little setup of where you are and who you are. We're heading down to Highway 7 in Moline. I have no idea where. I just made that up. Mom driving a little too fast on roads that are slick with rain, so that you have the conflict about what's going to happen with this crash. So the reader already knows, because the roads are slick, the tar is dark and lethal, and choosing the word lethal as opposed to just dark sets up that suspense. Every word you choose can set up the suspense for the reader and really make the book more powerful. And then we need to see why they have the accident, because the character was not asleep at the beginning. She was awake. So let's just see what happens. The tires hit a patch of ice or oil. I don't know what actually happened, and begin to squeal. And then we've got to understand action, reaction. So you had the burnt rubber and the tire squealing, but that's because Mom stepped on the brakes. So let's have the action. Mom steps on the brakes, and then the rubber feels the air and the tires begin to squeal and all of that. And then you want to have the movements happen, yes, still fast, because it is a car accident, so everything's going in fast motion. But before I can scream, the car jerks left, begins to spin, so that we're understanding why the fear and adrenaline is pulsing and throbbing inside her. So you want to have the action, car's spinning, and she's holding onto the seatbelt, and then the fear and adrenaline. That's what I mean about action, reaction. The world spins, a kaleidoscope of color, then a hard jerk, and we slam against a tree. So boom, 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 tree. And now we understand what the accident was, because we didn't have enough detail there to really understand it. And again, action, slam against the tree, then your head bangs off the headrest. So action, reaction. The glass beside me shatters, so we're assuming it's the passenger side window. The windshield cracks, because windshields are very hard to shatter. I think the passenger side window would be a little easier. Dark gray curls of smoke rise from the engine. Everything stands still. So you see how just drawing that out a little bit more, that accident becomes just as fast paced, but the reader has a second to absorb it. And then they're in this crappy situation, and then everything stands still. And you put that one line by itself, and it gives the reader a minute to, and then the character reacts, because she's not going to react right away. She's going to be stunned for at least a second, and then she'll react. So everything stands still, and then I added even me. I take a breath, just like the reader's going to want to, then unbuckle, wrestling with the airbag. And I like that the fabric cuts and burns, and she keeps going. I like all that. And then let's show just a little bit more of the details. I fumble for the handle, yank the door open. Action, reaction, the fresh air rushes me. But she's not going to have a second to absorb that, because she's going to tumble out of the car, roll onto the ground, and lay on my back for a moment. Above me, there are fading stars, a crescent moon, and night beginning to yield to day. So I added, beyond the fading stars, a crescent moon, and a night beginning to yield to day, because I didn't quite get it with the fading stars. I wasn't sure if this was like an alternate planet or why the stars were fading, but later at the end of the scene, Skeeter had that it was clearly going to become day. So we need to just set that up just a tiny bit, because anything that confuses the reader takes them out of the story and gives them a reason to put the book down and pick up their phone and look at TikTok. So we don't want that. We want them to keep reading. And I would think that instead of just thinking about her mom, she would be yelling for her mom. So mom, and mom doesn't reply. Mom, where are you? So you see that becomes her goal, to figure out where mama is, and her motivation is, where is her mother? I turn onto my knees, crawl forward, ignoring the pebbles of glass under my, oh, I have knees twice there. You want to take that out the second time, but turn over, crawl forward, ignoring the pebbles of glass under my knees, because she's not going to just get right to her feet. She was just in a major car accident, and so it's going to take a second to get on her feet. So let's just give her a little bit of a second. And also, she needs the motivation to get to her feet, the motivation to ignore all the aches and pains that are just about to start happening in her body. And that motivation becomes, then I see her in the car. And then let's the reader see it too. Because what you had was, she's still in the car, feeling the driver's door open. She lays limp on the steering wheel with no airbag for protection. I'm not sure why she doesn't have an airbag, but I couldn't answer that in there. But let's see her instead, and let's make it scary to the reader too. Then I see her in the car, her dark hair a curtain over the steering wheel, her head slumped forward. She is still, so still. Because this is that whole like, oh my God, is my mom okay? And you're going to be totally overwhelmed by it. She is still so still. That emphasis, that tiny little bit of emphasis, really raises the stakes for the reader. That's the action. Then the reaction. Anxiety twists my lungs into knots. So it makes a little bit more sense, right? We've got the action and reaction. And then scramble around the car, because you didn't put that action in, and she's in the passenger seat or even in the behind seat. She has to go around the car or come up to the front door, wrestle with the dentist driver's door, because even if she hit the tree on the front end of the car or the back end of the car, it's still going to dent, because cars are designed to kind of crumple. So wrestle with the dented driver's door. It yields with an angry creak of metal. And just little things like angry creak of metal add to the tension in that scene, add to the stakes, add to the fear. Really look at every word you choose. This is why I said every single word counts. Angry creak of metal has a lot more meaning to it than I open the driver's door. So when you make it really show the dented door, boom, you know mom's in a worse shape because the door's dented, and it takes a bit to open it up. All of that paints a more vivid picture. And she would keep talking to me, talking to her, Mom, are you okay? Because you're going to want to try to wake that person up. And so we're dragging this tension out a little bit more so that this character, you can really see her fear building. She doesn't move, doesn't make a sound. Light from the rising sun and the flashing car lights behind us bounces off the glass flecks in her raven hair. I also changed the order of that because the light is coming in first, bouncing off the glass flecks. You had the glass flecks and then the light. So you have to have the light bounce off the glass flecks, if that makes sense. You know, action, reaction. A thick stream of blood oozes slowly down her forehead. And then it's, Mom, talk to me, please don't be dead. Then you've really got a lot more of a hook there with Mom not being dead. And it's a lot stronger when you're doing that. Okay, so that was Skeeter's, and poor Skeeter's not even here, so I just tore it apart. Does everybody get it though, that how that one little tiny word choice can make a huge difference. If you saw the before and after of everybody's stuff, the skeletal stalks in the plants with Faith, and the angry creak of the metal with Skeeter, and what did I have with Cheryl? Cheryl's is a little bit further down. The steel for a spine, stubble, beginnings of a beard, all the mountain peaks for the hair, all of that kind of stuff makes for a much better, tighter picture. And depending on what you're writing, you really want to increase that tension in those hooks. So even if you're writing a romantic comedy, you're still going to have these hooks going in between to keep the reader turning the pages. They don't have to be the big hooks that you would have at the end of a scene or the beginning of a chapter that keep people up till 3 a.m, but little mini hooks buried in there as you're drawing out the tension with the book, and you're increasing what the reader is worried about. You're raising the stakes. That keeps people going through the chapter, because you definitely don't want them to stop in the middle of the chapter. Ideally, you want them to get to the end of the chapter and then go, oh, just one more chapter before I go to bed. And that's what gets me every night. I'm up to like 1 a.m. reading every night, because it's just one more chapter, just one more chapter. And that's because the authors that I'm reading are doing such a really good job of just keeping those middle of the scene hooks, those end of the scene hooks, the chapter hooks, all of that are not super obvious hooks. They're just enough to intrigue me to get me to turn the page. Okay. You guys are all so quiet. Nobody has any questions. Let me see where Cora's is. Okay. Now Cora had, she had an outline in here, and she wanted to know if there was too much happening and overwhelming the reader. And I got that she said that this scene is close, or this chapter is close to the climax of the book, which is a great time to have a lot of things happening, because you want the reader to just be like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. If you watch like Rings of Power or Lord of the Rings, because she's writing YA fantasy as well, or fantasy in general, there's always a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stakes are rising at the same time. But hers, she asked me if it was too much of a rapid and diverse pace will overwhelm the reader. And let me just say that if you're asking the question, the answer is probably yes, because your gut, if your gut is saying to you, maybe I have too much happening in this chapter, then your gut is probably right. So let me see where I put the, I think I turned I closed my comments on this. Where did I put them? They're somewhere in there. Show the comments so you guys can see what I said. I turned them off because it was hard to read everything. So she has, in the first part, she has meeting somebody, they discuss plans, then there's a battle, somebody dies, other people barely survive. Then they find out that there might be a betrayal. And as they head back to their original town, they learn that somebody is in turmoil. I'm not sure if it's a person or a place, but that is a lot to have happen. And you've got such a great hook already here in the scene with the possible betrayal. And oh crap, this is also a mess. So you've got people dying, there's somebody betrayed, and this person or place is also in turmoil. That's enough. That should be a chapter. And even though you're close to the climax of the book and you want it to move quickly, you can do short chapters. Not every chapter has to be 22 pages or 17 pages. You can speed it up with shorter chapters as well. Because it's a lot for the reader to absorb. It's a lot of places and things for them to remember. And a chapter, just like the white space that I talk about, of course I don't have one of my books here, but just like how I talk about the white space in between, the chapter break also gives a reader a moment to breathe, and then we can go on to the next thing. And so then she has another person's death, and they're being framed for it. And there's arguments about negotiations and everything else. And then she's got another really great hook here. The person that is still living and comes back. So don't do that a disservice by burying it in the middle of a chapter. That's a cool, really good hook. Like this person you thought was dead is back. So again, make that another short chapter itself, because that's a really, really good hook that you don't want to lose. If you bury some of these really good things, like somebody's betrayed me and oh crap, the whole town is in turmoil, or the person is in turmoil, or oh my gosh, this guy is still alive, you lessen the impact of it. So when you're looking at how you're going to get people to keep turning the pages, you really want to kind of think about what kind of hooks do I have built in here. Then I thought that the third one is such a great hook at the end because Rose goes back to Desolate. They return to Sanctuary. They confront somebody. They have a meeting. They discuss options. And then she finds out the potential location of her son. Boom, massively great hook. Great thing just before the climax of the book. So absolutely don't do it a disservice by burying it in with all of these other events that are happening. Just kind of make it all into its own little chapter, even if they are short chapters. So that's my advice with that. Okay. I talk so much. Gayla, the tip about the sticky note, I'm not sure what tip that is. And Faith, I'm glad, like the imagery, no questions though. And Cheryl, glad to see you. Gayla, it's always better if I put things in front of my face. Yes, I put things in front of my face all the time. I have a big whiteboard here. I usually have two, but I think I put one away when we had a ton of company for Christmas or something, or some other holiday. But usually I have a couple of them around my office, and I like to have a lot of things in front of me. And I have all these little like papers that have like my goals and stuff on them. And I have little reminders, and I have like, a reminder to tell you guys to write with intention. Like I have a lot of those things all around my office all the time. And when I was first writing, I had that Sue Ellen Welfender quote, that's a dreadful shame how many stories won't get told because a writer gave up their dream too soon. Because 10 books in 8 years, I think it was 250 rejections. I actually have a video that I recorded, but I haven't edited yet, about 250 rejections and how disheartening that is. Because this was before self-publishing existed. Self-publishing came in just before I sold my first book. It had just become a thing. But at the time, it was like the stepchild you didn't want to talk about, like the kid born out of wedlock that nobody talks about, because it was not what it has become today. And so nobody saw the potential in it at the time. So I didn't see it as an option. And I knew that I really did want a publisher because I knew deep down that I needed a lot of help. Not a lot of help, but I needed somebody to guide me in my career, because editors do not hold your hand a whole lot. They expect a very close to perfect product to be turned in. They will tell you, go back and add more conflict, or this storyline doesn't work, but they expect you to figure out how to do that. So they don't have that hands-on time that they had back in the day. So I knew that I wanted that kind of distribution and that editorial direction for my career, and I purposely chose traditional publishing. And I have stayed probably 75% traditional publishing, 25% indie publishing, because I despise marketing with every fiber in my being. I hate it so much. I can't even tell you people how much I hate it. I really, really hate it. And so I'm not good at it. I don't like doing it. I haven't really found a great book marketing firm that I would even recommend to my clients. I'm sure they're out there. I just haven't really found anybody that really has nailed that niche, because it's such a very specific niche. And so I don't do as much indie publishing. Now, the entire Writing Compelling Fiction series is indie published. I'm working on writing the compelling romance novel, because as I was putting together writing the romance novel course, I was like, I have enough here for a book. So I'm going to do a writing compelling romance novel book as well. But those I did indie publish because I want to be able to go in and update them and do what I want to do with them and create this workbook and all of that. And because it's a little bit more of a fluid thing with the channel, I wanted to be able to have that freedom. So I have self-published, like some of these here are self-published. I have self-published some of my signal titles, and a lot of books that I got my backlist rights to, I republished those. But anyways, in self-publishing knows that it's an expensive proposition as well. And if the books aren't making the kind of money that you want them to, then you've got to really weigh, am I going to continue doing this? I do have a video coming out that I recorded but haven't edited yet. I recorded like a ton over the weekend, about how hard it is to be a small author, because I get it that you guys are all struggling and that you really want to obviously make a living at this, because nobody wants to do this for free unless you're independently wealthy. And it's tough. It is tough to be the chief marketer, the chief designer, the chief editor, the chief everything. And in order to invest in your career the way that you want to, a lot of times it's too expensive. And so a big part of this channel is to teach you how to do the things that I know how to do. I am certainly not going to teach you how to design a cover, because I have zero graphic design skills. I'm not good at it. I'm not going to teach you that, but I'm going to teach you everything about the inside of the book. Because if you can write a compelling novel, that is half the battle right there. Because if it's a crappy novel, nobody's going to talk about it. If it doesn't stay memorable in the reader's mind, they're not going to talk about it. They're not going to tell their friends, and they're not going to buy the next one. So what you do with this book is super important for the next book. And if you want a career, then you have to invest in improving as an author with every single book that you do. And at least, even if it doesn't sell what you want it to, or even if it doesn't take off the way you want it to, because there are 12 million factors at play in terms of how a book does in the marketplace, you'll know that you can be proud of the work that you did. I think I've told you guys I had a book come out on 9/11, which was awful. I mean, obviously, I had no interest in talking about the book for quite a while. It was several months before I promoted the book, and it sold nothing. Plus, that first print run, because some of them were still being printed on 9/11, and they were being printed in New York City. Some of that first print run was missing pages. And when people did buy the book like a month or two later, I got a ton of hate mail about that. They were missing pages. But I told everybody the printer was like just down the street from the towers. And I'm sorry, but they were working that day. And I think that's what happened. But that totally changed everything. I once had a book come out with the same cover as somebody else, and her book sold better because I think they thought it was mine, or maybe her book was better. It's also that possibility. And that really impacted my next contract with that publisher. I've had a lot of small, weird little things that have happened in my career that have totally transformed it. The only thing I have control over is how good of a job I do on the page. That is the only thing I have control over. You don't know if the next hurricane's going to come through all the targets that are carrying your book in the fall, and then your book doesn't sell and your publisher lets you take the blame for it. You don't know if that's going to happen, or if you're going to write a book and it'll come out on the wrong day, or somebody else has a better idea, or Nora Roberts is coming out with a romance the same day you do. You don't know any of those things. You don't have any control over those things. You do have control over the quality of the words you put in the page. And that's what I really want you to try to focus on. Samwise said, my sister Kevin has tried to write a book for the last 6 to 15 months, if not less, and has had a very hard time coming up with a title for the end. And yeah, it absolutely can be tough. I think I was talking to somebody in the community the other day, and sometimes I believe that blocks are not just a lack of knowledge or a lack of ambition. I think a lot of blocks are fear, because if you finish the book, people are going to read it. And if people read it, then they're going to judge it. And if people judge it, they're going to put a review on Amazon, right? And it's kind of that give them us a cookie thing, except with a lot of anxieties and fears and doubts. And so it can be really crippling to your ambition to finish your book, or to write that next chapter, or to even get started on the page, because all that is working in the back of your head, even if you're not thinking about it. I have to tell you, I go through it every single time. I'm working on a new suspense proposal right now, and I'm like, oh, this could be better. Oh, I could do this better. Oh, I could make this more tense. Oh, I think this scene is feeling flat. I have all of the same feelings you guys do. And sometimes I'll just keep rereading it to reassure myself that, yes, it works. It's not that bad. It needs a little tweaking, but I don't know what tweaking yet. And I'll come back to it and it'll be fine. And I look at the others and I'm like, okay, I've written a few books before. I think I know how to do this. But every single time I go through the same doubts and fears. The whole point is to keep writing regardless. So, all right, you guys were so easy today. It's awesome. So I'm hoping that you all liked this, because I do want to do it again in a couple of weeks. Here is the form again. Definitely fill out the form. It'll be the next one will be in 2 weeks, whatever that date is. I have no idea. Is that the 30th of September? I think. We'll be back here again to do another one. And if you like it, let me know in the comments or on the channel, or shoot me an email or any of that. And if you, I think you can email me through the channel if you want to get your pages. I'll throw it in here. I'll probably regret it. I might get a whole bunch of spam, but here's my email address. So Cheryl, Skeeter, Cora, Faith, if you guys want your pages, just email me and let me know, and I will send you the page with all of the markup and stuff on it. And don't be overwhelmed by all of the red, because it's not there to tell you that it sucks. I'm not telling you that it sucks. It's there to tell you that these tiny little tweaks can make a massive difference. And the only way I can do that is to show you. And that means there's going to be some red, because I tracked all the changes of what I put in there. And it's not, I don't want you to be discouraged. I don't want you to feel like you should quit because of that. You're learning and you're here. And that is better than a ton of other people are doing. I can't tell you how many people I have sat beside who have never finished a book, who haven't even started a book, who talk about wanting to write a book and don't do it. And you guys are all here and you are learning and you are growing. And so if you do get a lot of read back, it's not a mark of your badness at writing. It's not even a word, but it's not a mark of how bad of a writer you are. It is a mark of your dedication to your craft. And I love when people are dedicated to their craft, because that means there's going to be really awesome books for me to read, because I'm always running out of books to read. So I appreciate everybody being here. And thank you, Faith. Yes, it will be the 30th that we will be here again at 3 o'clock. So you got 2 weeks to polish up your 200 words. And don't forget to add the 200 words. I had one person that forgot to add them. So you need to give me something to work on to give it to you. And don't be discouraged. Keep writing and keep learning. And I will see you guys on Friday for writing sprints. So thank you all for being here. And I will see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, guys.